Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Josh and Jason Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Monday. If you don't know me, I'm a Christian rapper, devoted husband, father, and Army veteran. I'd like to introduce him to my co-host. He's a Christian, devoted husband, and father. What's going on, Jason?
What's up, man? How you doing? How's everybody doing today? It's
Great.
I know, yeah,
Let's
great.
go.
Yeah. Let's have a gender reveal.
Yeah, Jason's having a baby. Yes, congratulations.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Let's go.
Oh, it's such a
Team
blessing.
Blue. Let's go.
Such a blessing.
So we have
it's such a blessing. Life is great, dude. Everything's so good.
Hey, kids, dude, honestly, bro, kids are definitely a blessing.
It changes women, bro. It changes, yeah. When they're here.
Yeah.
When they're here, when they're not here yet.
Oh, yeah. It's hard when they're young too. But hey, we have a awesome show for you guys today. Enough about us. We'd like to introduce our guest, returning guest. Last time we had an excellent show, and I actually had a lot of people hit me up about it. Dustin Mccarlie. How's it going,
Correct.
Dustin?
Good. Excellent. Glad to be here.
I have you down as Dustin Kiru's brother. I was like, Dustin, no, Mccarlie. I had to say it right. So today we're going to have a interesting show on Bigfoot. And, we haven't done a show on that yet. So that's cool. I think I have not put a ton of research in on Bigfoot in my lifetime. But when I was a kid, my mom used to always show us the sightings, and she had like books on it, and she loved it. So Dustin, my mom listens. So hey, shout out to Mom.
Nice.
We love you. So hey, we'll have Dustin kind of go over some stuff, and maybe we can connect it to the Bible, some Nephilim, whatever we could do. Mm-hmm. We'll see what's up. So go ahead, Dustin, take the floor, brother.
Well, I'd kind of like to steal a page of the Blurry Creatures podcast book and ask each of you what you think Bigfoot is, just to see kind of where the water is at.
Well, for me, it's kind of tough, man, because as I study the sightings, it literally could be, it could be a person in a suit, or it could be an actual animal. So I went over, I kind of just looked through a lot of stuff on it, and if it is real, I would say, that it could be like an animal, or it could just be, the only way you can connect it to the Nephilim, you could connect the Bible is probably the Raphaim, not the Nephilim, but the Raphaim. Mm-hmm. And I don't really see the characteristics in the biblically showing that it would be like hairy like that. But hey, there's people that have full on hair on their face and their back and all that. So maybe it is Raphaim, leftover Raphaim. Maybe it's just a creature that is just out there, and maybe it does have psychic abilities and all this, and communicates, where it could see you coming. So that's why it gets out of the way. So, all right, it's a tough one, man. But if it is real, I would say it could be that. But Jason, what do you think, bro?
Oh man, there's a lot of different ways you can go. The Native Americans, they have their version of it. Yep. I know being from Canada, Dustin, there's a lot of stuff going on through Alberta, not Alberta, but a lot of stuff by the Rocky Mountains and all the way through there. Yes, there's a lot of sightings through there. Man, I wouldn't know how there's versions of in the Bible. Maybe I don't know if it's not Leviathan's the water, but Behemoth, I think. Uh-huh. There's some things that you can explain, bro, but these are just bigger creatures. They can still be. They can still be just bigger men, you don't know that. There's stories of them just being bigger men, and there's stories of them running down their own like a buffalo or a deer and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. Like, it is crazy. I know that like bears, when they die, you'll never find their carcasses. So they go deep somewhere. They go die somewhere like where you'll never find them. So you'll never really find the grizzly bear carcass, because it'll always find a way to die somewhere where you won't find it. So that's the way, kind of like, I can understand, like if it's that, extinct almost, I can understand like you're not finding any dead body parts of it, because you never find a dead grizzly bear, bro, ever. Like, you'll never find that. It's like very hard to like
one that didn't get attacked. You're just talking about one that just died
yeah,
naturally or
yes,
something.
yes.
Yeah.
Even that, dude. Like they just don't, you just don't see them around, bro. So I can understand like you're not finding a dead carcass of it because it could just go deep into a mountain where you just never. And by the time you go find it, you'll be like, oh, that's just. It could be anything, after a while, it could be anything on the ground that's been decomposing. But
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you could go at it. They're huge, they're big, they're hairy. They some are, most of that I've read about are, they're not really, they're not really big time problems. They don't try to kill a lot of people, but that's what the difference between the giants and this Bigfoot thing. Like, excuse me, the giants is like the Nephilim stuff. They were terrorizing people. So who knows what it is? It could be a monkey, it could be an ape, it could be an ape that's been in Americanized ape that's not, that's not, you don't really evolve, but you get used to your surroundings. It's very cold wherever it's at. It's always very cold and desolate. And like if you go like in the forests the forests in California they don't compare to the ones up like by Washington or Oregon or where especially in Canada. You're like, man, you can't see like 10 feet in front of you. You're like, you have no idea what's out there. You have no idea what's walking around out there. Especially you start going way up tied by spots where no humans ever touch. You'd be like, whoa, what is this? Well, okay, I could believe that. I can totally believe that. I believe it totally.
Yep. So what do you think, Dustin? What do you think it is, brother?
Well, see, I don't really have a like dead set 100% opinion. I have ideas that I like.
Yeah.
Based on, just looking at the different stories, talking to different people that I know that have had experiences with what they think is probably a Bigfoot or something along those lines. There's kind of a lot of different names for it. And the names is kind of where I've been looking into more recent. I haven't looked into Bigfoot like extensively for like my whole life or anything, but the last year I've been kind of looking into it a bit more. And then I'd say the last few months, me and my cousins and brother-in-law have been kind of doing, expeditions, so to say.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just going
cool.
out as remote as is kind of easy for us to do on a weekend.
Yeah.
And just kind of seeing what we can see, going to places where it's like people have claimed that they've seen stuff, and just kind of looking around and, hanging out and having fun is kind of the point of it. But it's, if we've seen something along the way, obviously that would be pretty exciting. But anyways, with the names and stuff, there's a lot of native tribes that refer to them as let's pull up some notes here because I don't want to get that wrong, actually.
Okay, no problem.
But they'll refer to them as Wildman, or hairy man, or bad person, or like rejected man. These are translations in English, obviously, of the native words. I can't attempt those. But I find it interesting that they have these names for them. So, you hear the names and you kind of go, okay, well, that makes sense, right? Like they're going to refer to it as just a big, hairy man that lives in the woods, or a wild man that lives in the woods, or et cetera, which makes sense because that's kind of what it is, just by looking at it and not knowing anything about it. And obviously every documentary or anything that's done by like a university or whatever, talking to the native tribes, people always puts it as, this is how they see it. We don't believe this is totally their opinion, because they're so much, they're so spiritual in that way, the native tribes, that everything around that whole Bigfoot, wild man kind of realm is all just evil spirits and like danger, stay away. They're always trying to get away from them. It's always bad. Seems to be some type of danger that, like, it's hard to track down, but it almost sounds like they had this. There's a term called Wendigo. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of that before. Wendigo. And I think somehow that this perhaps could tie into that, because the whole thing around Wendigo is someone would be, in a bad state, and an evil spirit called a Wendigo would come upon them and usually force them into cannibalism and supernatural powers. So if the tribespeople suspected somebody of being a Wendigo or affected by one, they would kick them out of the tribe to live as a wild man. This is what they said. So I find that interesting because it's like, well, what else do they call a wild man? Well,
Yeah.
a Bigfoot. I'm not saying that, you kick somebody out of the tribe, then they're forced to go live out in the wilds, perhaps affected by evil spirits. Now they're becoming a wild man or quote unquote Bigfoot. But, it's just kind of interesting, the choice of words on that.
Yeah.
Especially when you have, who was it? I was listening to someone.
I was gonna say God did that to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah,
He turned him
exactly.
out
Yeah.
to be a beast amongst and he did. He grew hair and he was eating and living as like he was be an animal. So who knows that maybe that's where Wolfman came from. Maybe that's where like a werewolf or something like that came from. But these things are saying that these things were like the American Indians and Native Americans are around here. I kind of I look at them and like, okay, these guys aren't like lying about it. They're gonna say, "Ooh, this is the boogeyman." Like, this is what it was.
No, it's very serious for them too. Like,
yeah,
it's not
very serious. Yeah, it's not a joke. It's like you're gonna go there and like, oh, this is not. They really fear these things. Like, hey, man, these things are out there, dude. Like, they're not. And yeah, like you said, they call them. It has to do with like mostly negative, wild man, hairy man. Yeah, like the devil.
Well, it sounded like almost sounded like the wild men that they send out that with the Wendigo, like it's like they got possessed by a spirit, and yeah, it almost sounds like that. So
there's an old story about a guy that an Indian Native American that went out and I don't know if it's the same thing that he's talking about, but something overcame him and he became a cannibal and ate himself. That's when he started getting all these powers. And then that's when like it was a story of that's how those things started, like in a culture. I forgot where it's at. It's like by I think the Kenyan River or something or lake or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, like Kanugi or it's somewhere in Canada. It starts with a K. It's like Ketnug or something like that. But they had like stories about that stuff. I was doing a lot of research too.
What's crazy is we just had a Enoch on the show and he was talking about like Baal and Moloch, or sorry, when they were sacrificing the children to Moloch, the people were cannibalizing and eating the fetuses of the babies, right? And he was saying that maybe that's what caused the Raphaim. It was really interesting take. So what you're talking about with the Wendigo, like maybe like it maybe the spirit gets into the person and the person starts being cannibalistic, and it maybe does turn them like wild. I don't know, man. It just sounds like pretty crazy, but hey, I mean, who knows?
And there's two schools of thought on the whole Wendigo thing. One is that like the Wendigo kind of could seize you in a moment of your own weakness to possess you. And then the other is that someone who perhaps cannibalized or did these terrible acts would attract a Wendigo to them. And either way, they didn't want anything to do with you. If you did one of those, or specifically that act, cannibalism, they feared the Wendigo and they would cast you out. Like they were all shun you. You were done.
Wow.
But the more that you look into that, it's just you can't help but wonder why you're being cast out to live as a wild man when that's what they call Sasquatch. And the two stories that have stuck with me the most regarding Wendigo was one, actually it's the first I think the first legal hanging that ever happened in Alberta was a guy who was working for the Hudson's Bay Company, a native man. I think his name was Swiftrunner, I'm pretty sure. And he had devoured his family out in the woods and came to this Hudson's Bay Company fort telling them, oh, his family had died. They'd all starved to death. So they sent out a group to go investigate. And they go, they found bones that were cracked open and the marrow taken out. They found, I think it was a pot of human fat was stored, like to be used for later. And so they figured, no, this guy, like he did something. So they went back, they put him on trial. I think it lasted about 20 minutes and he ended up confessing to it. But he claimed that he'd been possessed by a Wendigo beforehand. And they thought, well, either way, like we're hanging this guy, because they didn't want anything to do with it. So if you believe he was possessed first, perhaps he was prone to it and then did the act, or he's just, using that as a cover up for whatever. But they did point out that his camp was something like 1.5 miles away from the fort. So there was never a point in time where he would have starved so badly that they couldn't have gone to the fort for help. He worked for them. They would have helped him. So there was really no reason for him to do any of that. And the whole thing is kind of weird. And then one of the other ones, it happened in Alberta as well, I believe. And I think this was in the 1920s or 30s. It was right after World War I anyways. It was a British doctor. And this one is more of a legend. The last one is, like you can actually look up the records and like there's an official docket and all that. But this British doctor who had served in World War I came to Canada and was sent to a small town of like 50, 60 people. They had some outbreak of some fever that was killing a bunch of people, and something like half the population died. And the doctor just was at his wit's end with the whole ordeal, and ended up his wife got sick and passed away from the same fever. And he locked himself in his house. And it was 2 or 3 days before they could even get into the house. And the people that got into the house, because they're like, hey, you need to keep on helping us here. Like, this is your job. Come on. They broke into his house, and the doctor had consumed the body of his wife and was living like a crazy man in the corner, like obviously had lost his mind. He attacked the people that found him, hurt them badly, allegedly ripping the arm off of one guy, which just, how could a human just do that naturally? So anyways, they all left because they couldn't stop him. The people that remained in the town were found afterwards all murdered in their homes and their bodies partly consumed. And the natives in the area again said, well, it was the doctor. You guys should have dealt with him because he was possessed by Wendigo. It got him in his sadness for his wife dying and took him over and killed everyone that remained in the town.
Interesting. Jeez.
Which, it's kind of the two, because the doctor, perhaps, a good person, you could say, trying to help. Then in his moment of weakness, coupled with his frustration of not being able to stop this, an evil spirit sees an opportunity and gets him. Whereas you have the other man who, perhaps had invited it in himself with his own kind of wickedness, you could say.
Yeah.
Which I think is sort of, if I'm probably reaching pretty hard if I want to tie it to that. But if you're trying to tie that to the Bible, I would say that's the more biblical way, right? Is someone trying to intentionally corrupt themselves in the service of evil, to either attract or gain, whether knowingly or unknowingly, attention from evil spirits, which I do think happens. But I think there's something about that they talk about this, and that they know that it occurs, and they were aware of it, and they had a whole game plan around, if it happened, how to deal with it.
Wow. Interesting, dude. So we have that side of it, and then they say there's been over 10,000 reported Bigfoot sightings in the continental United States.
Oh, dude, it's everywhere.
with reports from every state except the island of Hawaii. 1/3 of all claims of Bigfoot sightings are located in the Pacific Northwest, which Jason was talking about. With the remaining reports spread throughout the North America, most reports are considered mistakes or hoaxes, even by the researchers. That's what they say. They're going to say that. Smithsonian, they hide giant bones. You're gonna, even if they did find Bigfoot bones, and Smithsonian came in, and they would hide that as well anyway. So.
Well, and one thing I've thought too is, like, how could you honestly tell the difference between giant bones or Bigfoot bones?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Like when we've seen like the footage from like lots of countries in South America, where you can see the photos of the giant skeletons where they don't just hide them, and you can even go see them, and you're going, wow, there's a 9-foot skeleton. It's like, what's that? Like, we something big.
For real. Yeah, dude, true. So dang, bro, interesting stuff. So when did it start, bro? Like, besides the Native Americans, let's see, like, it was 1958, I think, something like that. Is that when the first Bigfoot sightings started coming out, like in America, or what
they started to refer to them more as Bigfoot or Sasquatch sightings? Sasquatch, I think, is a name that comes from a tribe in southern BC. They gave them that name, and I don't remember what it actually translates to, but it would be a similar meaning to all the other words that I gave you before there. But the Nakani, or Wildman, or hairy man, sightings have been happening ever since people have been recording them, coming to the Americas. Some of the earlier stories are in the 1700s, lots from like the late 1800s, when a lot of people started going like up into the Yukon and the Northwest Territories looking for gold. There's one particular valley called the Nahanni Valley, and it's got a whole portion of it that's referred to as the Headless Valley now, because of all the corpses of miners that are found decapitated in that area. And that started in like 1880s when they started finding just decapitated miners. There was a brother who had gone there with a group of people. They found a whole bunch of gold. They were super excited. The native tribes told them, do not be there. Do not be there at night. There's evil spirits out there. You guys don't want to be out there. You should leave. But of course, they didn't believe them, and they found gold. So why would they leave? So they sent one of the party back to go talk to the other man's brother and get the rest of his family to come out, because they wanted to kick off a big operation. And they said they would send word when they had found a good enough spot. So don't come out until we've gotten a hold of you. And of course, they didn't have cell phones or anything like that. Time, it was hard to communicate.
Yeah, for sure.
So they go, they wait a year. They don't receive any word. They wait another year, and they get worried enough that they figured they should go check. So they go up the river. They talk to the tribes people who knew the area where those guys had went to. They were again warned to not go there. They traveled up the river until they found a small camp on the side of this Headless Valley. There they found the 3 decapitated miners, and further off in the woods they found the last one, and their cabin had been burned and their heads like ripped off is what it appeared.
Jeez.
So nobody wanted to mine there after hearing that type of story. It got published in newspapers at the time. It was kind of a big deal. That yeah, and then it started becoming called Headless Valley because you found 4 headless people there. I think it was like 5 or 6 years later, another group went in, and basically the same story happened. That same story has happened in that valley like something like 8 times between 1880 and I think the last time was in the 1920s or 30s. And every single one of the murders has had the RCMP show up, or the Mounties, do an investigation and say none of them are linked. It's all just, acts of nature. It was bears or something, but why is a bear killing someone, taking their head off, never finding the head, and then just leaving it? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And the natives in the area, of course, said, well, they were consumed by evil spirits. They trespassed on the land, and they sent the Wildman after them, and they killed them. And that's what they do. They decapitate you to show you you're not welcome here. Stay away.
Oh,
so it's kind of a, and that's the thing that I find so interesting with the like Bigfoot sighting stories is like Bigfoot isn't some big mass murderer running around in the woods like killing people, right? Like people are afraid of it when they see it typically, because it's frightening. What is it? But there's even stories of of people being lost in the woods, and a Bigfoot shows up and sort of guides them back to where they need to go. Shows that it's capable of like empathy, or some type of reasoning, or it just doesn't do necessarily what you would expect.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting, especially if you're thinking of it in the idea of, oh, this is a person, or it was a person at one time, and now it's something else, something between, maybe a piece of that humanity is stuck there, and you could see some of that poke through. I don't know, but I know there was one tribe in particular, someone from a university interviewed them in the 1950s, and they believed that the Nahanni, the Nakani, the wild men, were a hybrid of a human spirit and what happens when you're just allowed to live wild. And they said that this is what their medicine men had taught them, was when the people went out and did that, that's what would happen. Now, they didn't say that they cast the people out to be that way, and I believe they were asked about Wendigo in that paper, but they had a sort of different idea on it altogether. But it's also kind of hard to get any, like lots of them have different ways of looking at a thing. They'll have different words for the same thing. So it's kind of hard to get all that through, which is kind of what I've been doing the last while is digging through all the different accounts from different tribes and sort of juxtaposing them together and seeing what makes sense.
Yeah, because they don't have an agenda, you know, the Native Americans, when they speak about this, that's why it's good to go back to that. And, you know, some people will have this agenda to maybe make money off a sighting or whatever, you know, like these people don't have an agenda, and they're just telling you what they've learned throughout the years, right? So I think that's interesting, and that's a good way to go about it. What about paranormally? Like, do you like, have you studied anything like where they can like basically read your mind? Or
so yes, now there's a lot of accounts where when people have been feeling like they're being attacked by Bigfoot, they know typically the people that kind of push those types of encounters, they know kind of what they're like. They already believe in Bigfoot, right? They're afraid of it, but not so afraid of it that they're not willing to like go out and like mess with them. You know what I mean? So it's when they say that it's when they have an encounter that feels aggressive, that there's such an overwhelming fear that it almost feels like some type of evil force is assaulting your mind. And it's more like a battle of your will against theirs than it is anything else. There's also people who have said that they've had thoughts put into their minds of just an image of something, like of their home, or if they should leave or something like that, where they say, you know, that's just, I've never had a thought like that before. I don't know if it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like it just beamed into my head, you know, you need to leave and be clear of this place.
Yeah,
which is interesting too, because the whole Wendigo behavior is very similar. It's someone in a dark place, all of a sudden it inserts ideas into their head that aren't necessarily them, but it kind of coaxes them towards just to see what will happen. Often it gets people in their dreams. So even if they had, if someone brought forward that they were having dreams about cannibalism or murder, they would be terrified because they thought, you know, a Wendigo is assaulting our camp. Like it could be getting anyone at any time. And for whatever reason, they thought that water would save them from those types of things. So if there was some type of spiritual encounter along those lines, be it with a Wendigo or with a Bigfoot, they would try and get onto an island or something in the middle of a lake, and then they felt safe.
Well, if you think about demons, you know, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, they drown in the flood, so they don't seem too like water. So maybe that was a good idea, you know,
something to sort of scare them.
Like the pigs that the demon Jason talked about this before. The pigs that they went into, they ended up going into the water, but you know that like they're scared to go in the water, you know. So I mean, if you died in the flood, obviously you don't want to get flooded, and yeah, there could be something to that, you know.
Yeah, I know the thing that mostly happens in any of the encounter things that I've heard of is they throw stuff kind of at you, or they'll make sounds to, you know, whistling, hooting, kind of maybe sounding like laughing or screaming or crying sounds to try and frighten you off or to communicate with each other. I don't know. But I know there was one story, for instance, this was near-ish where I live. There was a guy came into the store where my cousin works, and he told her, you know, do you have Bigfoot kind of stuff going around here? Do you have paranormal things? This was right at the beginning of hunting season in the area, and we get a lot of people that travel here for hunting, so it's not uncommon for people to be here just for that and not know anyone. And she told him, well, you know, there's lots of stories kind of it, but he said, well, he's like, I packed up my camp last night. He's like, I'm going home because something came up to my tent in the middle of nowhere and started throwing rocks and sticks at my tent. And he was so terrified that he just left. I'd love to find out who that guy is and talk to him about it and figure out where that was. But
yeah, I've heard that they throw things and stuff like that to scare you away. Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess this guy said that he had some recordings, like they're called the Sierra Sounds out in Sierra Nevada.
Yes.
And it's like they said it's definitely not a language. It's not a language that's human in origin, and it cannot have been faked. So yeah, they said that they basically recorded the Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yeah,
And I
they
thought that
had a
was interesting.
linguist like look into that and
Yeah.
give that opinion. Like it's an official. It's official.
Scott Nelson was the Navy cryptologic linguistic that looked into it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's official, but I mean they still don't know if it was a Bigfoot or something else, you know. Interesting. Yeah, so I mean as far as like the sightings, is there any sightings that you saw that you're like, dude, this looks like legit?
So
Or is it
I haven't personally had any Bigfoot experiences. I'd I kind of don't want to, but I'd also
yeah.
like to, you know what I mean? Like I have a healthy enough fear of it, especially because I would lean more towards it's some type of spiritual thing that's probably not great. And I'm not looking, to have like dealings with that and on purpose. If we go out in the woods and you see one or whatever, that's a thing, but I'm not going to go out and try and necessarily entice one in. But I have had, and I don't think, to be honest, that you can kind of choose if to have a Bigfoot encounter. I think they sort of just show up and you either see them or you don't. It's like I live in the middle of like country where there's lots of mountain lions too. I've seen 2 mountain lions in my entire life. Like that's
Yeah,
it. And they're here. And there's
I've
way more
seen
of those than there is Bigfoots, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. I've seen one in my entire life too. So but I'm not living in Canada, so that's even more crazy. Is there any video evidence that you've seen that you thought was pretty good?
see, the video evidence is tough because it's like you see a video and you're just like, well, it's either Bigfoot or it's a fake. There's no in between.
Yeah.
Like there's no in between. There is a guy on YouTube, Todd Standing is his name. I think his channel's like Sylvanic Bigfoot or something like that. He has a 2-hour documentary that's, you know, if there's Bigfoot footage, he's the one that has it. If it's
Hmm.
legitimate, he's the one that has it.
Yeah, I guess to go to that one to check it out. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
he goes out for weeks at a time and lives in the woods down by Nordegg in Alberta and other areas. But he has, I think, I want to say 6 or 7 videos of like close, zooming in with a 20 times zoom camera, but like close up of face kind of looking off into the woods. And usually what has happened is he's sort of led them off, like he's leaving the area, particularly after either they've thrown something at him or something like that. And then he'll hole up under a spruce tree or something in a ghillie suit and hide in the snow and just not move and just hope that they they kind of get close enough looking for him and just don't notice. And that seems to, if his footage is legitimate,
Yeah.
which it could be. I'm not saying it really is or isn't. Like I'd kind of like to talk to the guy personally just to see.
Yeah.
But his would be the most legitimate, I think. And watching that footage, I've watched that personally, and I just go, everyone's got to make a decision when they watch those videos what it is. But I don't know. I think it's
Exactly. Yeah.
probably a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's what you got to do, and yeah, Blurry Creatures is a good podcast to listen to. There's a lot out there that actually that is there any suggestions you have on that?
Blurry Creatures would be the best one, I would say. I mean, they say it at the start of every single podcast is, what do you think Bigfoot is? But like more specifically, just to get like information on tracking down Bigfoot and looking for them would definitely be Todd Standing, that Sylvanic Bigfoot YouTube channel. That'd be the best one. There's a guy also, if you're just interested in the stories of Wendigo, evil spirits, that kind of thing. There's a guy on YouTube who was a Canadian journalist, I think, a writer for a magazine or something, and he just does YouTube videos now of kind of paranormal activity and talks about it. Hammerson Peters is the YouTube
Okay.
channel name, and that's
Nice.
super interesting. He's got a really good voice for reading stories, and you can kind of just turn that on and
And just
listen to
listen.
that, and it's
Shout out to Cryptid Warfare podcast too. That's another one that's a
mm-hmm.
good one. Yeah, they do a good job too. They're gonna be on. We're gonna get together in December, but yeah, man. This is a pretty cool show so far. I mean, anything else you want to add to it?
Well, there was the people that I go out with have had like they're 100% convinced that Bigfoot is out there. My cousin in particular has had some encounters, and I believe he's telling the truth, where he's seen something unnatural and he thinks it was a Bigfoot. The first one being, I think he said he was 13. He was with one of his other cousins. This was a while ago, but and keep in mind where we live is very remote. You know, we're a 30-minute drive from the nearest town, which is small-ish. You know, like 15,000 people or less. That's a half-hour drive away. There's lots of places to go in the woods where you are extremely remote. You know, you ride a quad or something, you're 15-20 kilometers from the closest house, like in not very long of time. So even just on the woods on his property, like where his parents was at the time, it was pretty remote if you get out in the woods. So him and his cousin had sort of a little trap line that they would travel to places, so they didn't have to, you know, get their parents to drop them off or anything to go visiting, because as the roads where it was quite a bit of a go around, where it was like 2 kilometers if they just walked through the woods. So he said they had brought all their stuff out there in a side-by-side, all these tools to build this fort, and that's what they were going to play in. So he said they heard these sounds kind of while they were unloading stuff, and he just goes, that's just not normal sounds. So he turns and he sees this thing standing by this tree looking at them. It notices that they see it. They both start to kind of freak out, like they're not having fun seeing this. It turns around, steps over a bunch of deadfall several times, and walks away. And at that point, he immediately goes, it's not a moose or a bear. Like nothing, a bear especially could not walk on 2 hind legs like that. It's definitely something else. So they leave the area because they're afraid. And they come back later to try and see kind of what was going on. And they found a bunch of tracks. Now, interestingly enough, my cousin had a really not very good flip phone at the time, and he took a bunch of pictures of the tracks, showed them to his dad, who is a lifelong avid hunter, and he goes, I don't know what those are. It's like, those are not anything I've ever seen before. Immediately afterwards, the phone stops working. It won't turn on. Now, this is a thing, I know, right? But this is a thing that's like, I've heard from several different people where they have an encounter, they take a video, they have pictures of tracks or something along those lines, and then the phone just quits working. There was another guy that was a good friend of this same cousin. They were out in the bush by this helicopter crash site. So there was some forest workers that crashed a helicopter like 15-ish, 20 years ago in the area. And I think there was 4 people that were killed. And it's quite remote. It's down some like oil field kind of logging roads where there's no traffic besides for that work. And they've set up this memorial for it there. So they traveled out there to see this. They were looking for elk to go at the start of bow hunting season. So they get out there, and he bugles, and he doesn't hear anything back. And he's like, oh, okay, well, we'll keep going down. We'll see what's here. They go, man, it's like really quiet in here. Like there's no birds, nothing, like just dead quiet, like eerie quiet. So he bugles again, doesn't hear anything. Then they start to hear something kind of like crashing and smashing through the woods. And he goes, oh, it must be a moose. You know, we've kind of freaked out this moose. It's standing still. It's kind of watching us. So him and his friend kind of separate, sort of to get kind of different angles on this thing. And my cousin hears the sound again. He runs over to where his friend is. And his friend is just, looks like he's seen, you know, a dead body. My cousin looks over to where he's looking, and he sees something kind of dart around a tree and run away. Now, allegedly, his friend got a video in his shaking scaredness of a Bigfoot with its hands on a tree, peering its face around, looking at them. And then when he kind of realized they were both sort of circling around and had definitely been seen, it just turned around and ran away. And he said there was absolutely no hope they could keep up with it. You know, it's like 9 feet tall, taking massive steps.
Wow. Interesting.
But again, he took a video, and immediately afterwards, his phone quit working, just stopped working. So I don't know if it's something to do like, I don't know why the phones always quit working. It seems really convenient, but it does kind of seem to be a thing.
That's interesting. Yeah. So like there'd be like the Yeti, the abominable snowman. That's like more in like the Himalayan mountain range. There's just a couple different words for them. So another one is called a skunk ape. I don't know if you ever heard of that,
Yep.
but it's more like in the swampy areas, like Florida area, stuff like that. So if you guys want to look into that, also you said, what was the word they used? Wildman, right? They use
Yeah.
that.
Wild
That's
man,
that's in
hairy
Europe
man,
and also the
bad
Native
man.
Americans. And there's also a boggy creek monster, which is like a swamp stalker. It's kind of the same ape-like creature. That way, if you guys want to look into this, as viewers, if you want to check into it, um, yeah, dude. So you have people that actually had firsthand accounts of it, dude, which is interesting. The ones that I watched, that's it. It's just like, there's one in the 70s, which is like the famous one.
Yeah. Where it's
Um,
kind of walking.
yeah. So there's like one where there's a newer one where there's like one walking with its like kid or something, or like a smaller one. It's
Yep.
pretty interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there on it. I'm not like really big on researching this yet. I was in Vegas for like 6 days or five
Nice.
days, so I didn't get to like crush it on the research, but I got to like check into it a little bit, today, and I've looked into it. I definitely we definitely we can go crazy on a episode on the Nephilim, the Raphaim, and stuff like that. But as far as the cryptid stuff, I haven't really got into it yet, even though there's a lot of my friends have podcasts on it already. So I'm glad that you were able to come on and explain this, some of this stuff to us and open our audience up to it. And like I said, shout out to Blurry Creatures podcast, which is they're doing great. They have a lot of good guests on, and also Cryptid Warfare as well. And if I'm missing anybody else that talks about cryptids at all, I'm sorry. Much love to you too. If I missed you, I'm sorry. But Jason, any words, bro? Anything you want to add, dude? Because I know that
Oh no, I was just listening, bro. No, it's just who knows what it is, man. Who knows what it is? It's one of those things you can't explain.
Yep, it's interesting. So, all right, well, Dustin, we're coming up on like almost an hour. So, I mean, any last words? Anything you want to add?
If you like any of that kind of stuff, look up Hammerson Peters, look up the Sylvanic YouTube channel, Todd Standing. That's all the best information that you can get on it. Those are the stories about it from Hammerson Peters. If you want to hear about it, going all the way back, like impeccably researched. And Todd Standing is just you can just put that on and just watch a guy, out in the bush, pretty scared at times.
Yeah. So okay, yeah, check all that out, guys, and definitely we appreciate Dustin coming on and sharing it with us. Any last words, Jason, before we get off?
Oh, God bless everybody, man, and sit tight, man. A lot of stuff's going around right now, so keep everybody in your prayers.
Yes, keep us all in your prayers. We all go through spiritual battles. Keep Dustin in your prayers. Keep Jason, me, and we'll also keep you guys as well. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, definitely, man. I've there's a lot of rumors of wars and craziness happening, and as we all know, but if you guys want to check into the channels that Dustin talked about and also the podcast that we mentioned, check into it and you'll see some interesting stuff. Shout out to Mom. We know that you like this kind of stuff, Mom. So my mom's the one that introduced me to Blurry Creatures podcast. So I thank you for that. And everybody that's listening, we appreciate you guys listening. We just want to thank you guys for always tuning in, and we love all you guys, and I had a lot of people that had sent me that were number 2 podcasts for them listening, number 1, number 3, and all that stuff. We appreciate all that stuff. We don't do it for that, but it really is nice. Thank you for sending that to us, and thank you for keeping us in mind whenever you're about to listen to podcasts. So all right, let's go ahead and end this in prayer. So, Father God, in the name of Jesus, we appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you, Lord, for giving me a little vacation time, letting me kind of reset with my job and everything. And thank you so much for blessing us with this podcast, this show, with all the listeners, and hopefully we're doing the right thing for you, Lord. When hopefully we're bringing more people to the Bible and bringing more people to you, getting more people saved. Hopefully you are through us, actually. We know we're just vessels trying to do our best. Thank you for introducing us to Dustin. Thank you, Kira. We appreciate that connection, Lord, because Dustin's come on a few times, and we always have a really good discussion, and Lord, we're talking about stuff that could be myths, could be legends, could be, real, whatever it is. If it we know that there's the Nephilim in the Bible, we know that there's the giants, and we're just trying to go over stuff and kind of have a good time with it, Lord. So we appreciate you giving us this time. So thank you, Lord, for everything you do. We appreciate you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate you guys for listening. Please share the podcast. Give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify. It's really helping us. I can see that I think we have like 110 reviews now on Apple. Thank you for Conspiracy Cult, all the people you sent over to give us reviews, once I was on your show. Thank you so much for that. And we love you guys so much. And please share the show, like we said, and God bless you.